Okay, the first question we have for you is, before we get into the discussion of what's legal, what's not, what's constitutional, what's not, your reaction to the, I guess, military objectives of and the military decisions of the Trump administration to bomb Iran last night. What is your take on just the military consequences and actions?
It's a totally strategic blunder. I mean, we keep having the same story in America. We get into these wars, we declare the next day that the mission is accomplished, and then Americans bear the burden for decades afterwards. The reality is, first of all, we don't know how much of the nuclear capability was destroyed. But what this is going to do is put American troops at risk. We're already sending more troops to the Middle East, spending more billions of dollars getting enmeshed in the Middle East. It's going to create a generation of hate against Americans, counterterrorism threats. And the worst part is Iran is now going to say, I don't want to be part of the NPT. I'm going to be like North Korea. I'm going to be like Pakistan. We're going to kick out all the IAEA inspectors, and we're going to build our nuclear program covertly. So I think, yes, it's going to create a few days of good headlines that maybe they did some damage to the nuclear program. But over the next 1 to 3 years, we're actually making it more dangerous for Iran to become a nuclear power.
What about the argument that this is the first step towards regime change and that ultimately changing the regime in Iran is the way to make the world safe? To be clear, that's not my argument, but I want to hear your response to that argument.
Well, David, I think that's actually the most honest argument. I think the people, the only reason to be doing this is they want a regime change, and they're weakening Iran to try to effectuate a regime change. That's what's really going on, because there was no intelligence saying that Iran was any closer to a bomb today than they were in the 1990s when Netanyahu was saying this. So why attack now? There is a sense that Iran was weak, that Hezbollah had been taken out, Hamas is weak, and this was the time to get a regime change. Now, my view is that if you actually have a regime change wars, those tend to end very badly. We could have someone more extreme come in there. You're going to foment anti-U.S. hate. The person who won the Nobel Prize, the Iranian dissident, who more than anyone wants regime change, who's risking her life for regime change in jail, is saying that this will be counterproductive because it's going to result in people rallying around the current regime and create a sentiment where they can blame the West. And we didn't learn this lesson in Iraq. We didn't learn this lesson in Libya. We haven't learned this lesson in Afghanistan. It's mind-boggling to me we keep doing this.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said last night, or said this morning, that members of Congress were briefed on the attack after the attack was complete, and he insisted that complied with the War Powers Act. So talking about the legality of what happened in this attack. There are other members of Congress who say this is unconstitutional. Make your case for where we are legally when it comes to whether the president does, under the law, under the Constitution, have the right to do what was done.
Well, I would just say it should be the common sense test. Look at your newspaper this morning, the New York Times. America enters war with Iran. Any paper has the same headline. The Constitution clearly says that Congress has the power to declare war and not the president. This is not a strike because of an imminent threat. It's not that Iran was ready to launch a missile against Los Angeles and President Trump had to order something to take it out. This is a clearly offensive, preemptive strike. It's the definition of war. And it's not legal. Everyone's describing it as U.S. enters war. That should have been debated in Congress, and Congress should have said yes or no. And frankly, he may have gotten the authorization. I think it's a mistake. He may have gotten the authorization, and it's a totally subversion of the democratic process that he didn't go to Congress.
What about the argument that you might hear from the administration that would say, listen, we needed to execute a somewhat stealth attack on Iran, that in going to Congress and getting a declaration of war, that would have ruined the element of surprise, and that Therefore, we did what we had to do, and Congress can be mad at us, but we did what we needed to do, and everyone should be cheering us on because we preserved the element of surprise.
I mean, you don't have much element of surprise when Donald Trump is on Truth Social threatening the assassination of Khamenei, threatening that we've got the biggest bombs and we're going to take them all out. It's not like I think Iran wasn't expecting that this was a 50-50 proposition. And he said there was going to be a 2-week time period. He could have had Congress the last week or this week vote for the authorization and then still have the element of surprise. And he said, we have 2 weeks that we're going to give Iran, and then they could have struck at any point if he had the authorization. The authorization would just, in fact, strengthen his hand. It would have given him a stronger bargaining chip. So I think that the reality is they didn't want to come to Congress. But it's worse than that, David. It's that Congress doesn't want to have these votes. It's that Congress was so embarrassed when so many members of Congress voted for the Iraq War that they're perfectly happy to let Donald Trump or Joe Biden take the blame on these decisions. They don't want to get in the crosshairs of the base like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon, who don't want war, and the folks who are itching for a war. And so they're fine. Let the president take all the blame.
Well, I mean, that was going to be my follow-up question, which is why wouldn't this president, and why haven't past presidents, right? Because this is not out of the norm when it comes to how presidents behave with military action. Why don't they want to go to Congress and get the Congress behind them, right? If you're sitting in the White House and you're the president and you want to do this, just talk to us about what the reluctance would be from a Donald Trump. Looking at a Congress, by the way, run by his own party, why doesn't he want to come to Congress?
Well, he should. And Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal made the case that it's in his political interest. If he had come to Congress, he'd be sharing the blame, and he still would get the credit if he acted decisively. I think there are a few things. I mean, we have to be honest here that unlike other constitutional violations that Donald Trump has done, which are totally unprecedented, that, deporting people without due process, attacking universities, threatening corporations, this issue is something that a lot of presidents have violated. I mean, there have been other presidents who have violated and engaged in strikes, whether it's in Yemen and refueling Saudi planes, whether it was in Libya, that have been unconstitutional. And so this is a problem of giving the executive way too much power that Congress has ceded. Now, I think the reason Donald Trump didn't come to Congress here is it would have triggered a debate in Congress. And you would have had voices like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson and Theo Vaughn and others saying, this is not a great war, and we don't want this war, and it would have further divided the MAGA base. And so I think his calculation was, let me do quick strikes, let's get this over with, then I'll go back to saying I'm the president of peace, and maybe I can paper over this difference. I don't want 1 week of a debate that divides the Republican base.
Let's talk about what a resolution in Congress looks like. You have been calling for essentially an emergency session of Congress to vote on a bill that would explicitly say that there cannot be a war with Iran unless there is a formal declaration of war. What is the state of play among both Republicans and Democrats? So far, I see one Republican pushing this bill, Thomas Massie of Kentucky. I don't see any other Republicans coming out and saying they're going to support this. More and more Democrats are supporting it. But just to give people a sense of how difficult or easy it might be to get a vote on this bill and what the prospects of it are for passing.
It should be a simple matter, but it's become much harder than both Massey and I thought. I mean, because a lot of people are saying we don't want this war on social media. They're not willing to actually get on the resolution to restrict the president. We've had a couple other Republicans join. We've had about 47 Democrats join. I'm going to be working the phones all day today trying to get every Democrat on this. I mean, we should clearly be the party against another war in the Middle East. Massey is hoping that he's going to get some more people on the Freedom Caucus. But what I hope is that the speaker just brings it for a vote. It's supposed to get a vote. It's a privilege resolution. They would have to play games to try to deny a vote. But let's have a vote. Let's have people go on record on where they stand. But the reality is that Republicans, even those who are privately opposed to this war, are very reluctant to take on the president. The difference, though, David, in this is the first time I've seen a crack in the MAGA base. Tariffs, the other stuff, yeah, people didn't love it, but they weren't passionately against it. Here you have people who voted for Trump really who are disappointed. I mean, Tucker Carlson said it was the end of his presidency. That may be hyperbole, but he is losing at least 10 to 20% of his base.
You have been on television over the last week, essentially pressuring your own party's leadership to get on board. And there's been a lot of concern I've seen out there that the Democratic Party leadership has been silent or at least hesitant to try to use its position in Congress to get in the way of what Trump seems to be escalating. And it does look like some of what you've been doing, some of you having spoken out has moved, for instance, the Democratic Senate leader, Chuck Schumer. Talk to us about what you've been saying. Talk to us about whether you have seen a shift because of growing pressure out there on the opposition party to be in opposition.
I call it the Sirota lesson of politics. When we were both on the Bernie Sanders campaign, I was very reluctant. I thought that Bernie was doing great. I said Joe Biden is decent. I don't know. We should get into this intra-party squabble. And I don't think I'm portraying confidence for saying no. We got to point out that he voted for the war in Iraq. We've got to point out that he was not a candidate of peace. And you know why it mattered? It mattered not just because maybe Bernie Sanders would have had a better chance of the nomination. It mattered because it played out when Gaza was taking place and when Joe Biden had appointed some of the same people like Brett McGurk who got us into the war in Iraq. And so the lesson I learned is as long as it's factual, if it's not personal, if it's issues based, Democrats should not be afraid to call out their own leaders, to call out people in their own party. And I did that with Schumer. And people say, why are you making this an intra-party fight? He's the Senate minority leader. What are you doing? But guess what? Because people like me were calling him out, yesterday he says, no, I support the War Powers Resolution. And I guess I've always wondered why the Democratic Party were so afraid to criticize each other substantively. And the Republican Party has none of that fear. I mean, they go, criticize each other all the time. Don't criticize people personally, but I think on substance, on issues of the minimum wage, on issues of corporate money, on issues of war and peace, we need to speak out plainly.
I completely agree, and I think the Democratic Party has developed this culture of we don't even debate with each other over policy. We prioritize kind of manners and being nice to one another. But I agree with you. I don't think that serves necessarily the party. I certainly don't think it serves a kind of small d democratic discourse. And I think that you this week, as an example, you having gone out and really put the pressure on has actually started to move the party in the right direction. The follow-up to that question is, talk to us about what the hesitancy on the Democratic side, on the policy matter, what do you think that's really all about? I mean, to a lot of people listening to this, they'll say, look, this is a no-brainer for the Democratic Party to be against, oppose another war in the Middle East. But there are parts of the Democratic Party in the Democratic leadership that don't necessarily feel as strongly about that, about opposing what, for instance, the Netanyahu government wants to do in the Middle East region. Just tell us a little bit about what that fracture is in the party, what it's about, and whether it's changing.
Look at the people who cheerlead for the war in Iraq, and you probably guess which people are the most sympathetic to the strikes in Iran. Now, they may not be as vocally praising those strikes now because they understand the political mood has changed, but they still fundamentally have a hawkish approach to the Middle East. They believe that we should be going in and destroying these regimes. I had made this point earlier, and one of my friends said to me, my problem is not that they were supporting the war in Iraq. My problem is, why is someone who is talking about voting in Iraq still in Congress? It's like these people never leave. I mean, but you still have at least a third, if not half of the party is not a party that believes we shouldn't be getting into these foreign wars, that has a more conventional view of foreign policy, that supported Iraq, that supported staying a long time in Afghanistan, and they need to be challenged. And I thought when Obama won in 2008, that was a central debate between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. It wasn't just hope it changed. I think if Obama had not taken Hillary on the war in Iraq, he would not have been the nominee. I thought that the wing that was not for intervening in the Middle East had won. I was wrong. This national security apparatus is very deeply entrenched in the Washington Beltway, and is still entrenched in a large parts of the Democratic Party.
And I would extend that to the Democratic to media itself. I mean, you're right. The people who were the biggest advocates of the Iraq War, you would think that would sort of be the end of their credibility. They have been platformed and promoted and survived and continue to have lots of power. But I will say, it is encouraging that through the work of people like you, that is changing, I think, in the Democratic Party. It's not fast enough, but it is changing. And that leads to my final question. You have been rumored, there's been talk of you running for president in 2028. And I want to get a sense from you whether you do run or not, whether other people run from different parts of the party or not, whether you think this particular issue, whether it's specifically which side are you on of Donald Trump going to war with Iran, or the overall set of issues about war in the Middle East, war all over the world. How pivotal do you think these issues will be in the 2028 Democratic presidential primary?
It's going to be a huge fault line, one that is being underestimated by the media. Which candidate genuinely is going to be against these wars and for peace? I'll tell you, look, David, my passion is this economic patriotism, building new jobs in places like Johnstown and Ohio, and I put out all these proposals, and people are like, yeah, that's good, and occasionally, like, David Brooks will write an article saying, yeah, Ro has some thoughtful ideas, but it doesn't necessarily stir the soul. In the advocacy of going up against this war, in the advocacy of taking on Chuck Schumer, there has been such a response from the base saying we're sick of this. And I think that just from a political perspective, people who want to run for Congress, Senate, President, it is in their interest to be clearly in the wing of the party that's saying no more of these wars and willing to call out leadership. And the reason it's important to call out leadership is if you're going to be mealy-mouthed now and say, well, I'm against war, but I don't want to ruffle the feathers. Are you really going to ruffle the feathers once you get to Congress or Senate or our president, or are you going to just kowtow? The American people want to see that you have some fight because they know that's what it's going to take to actually stand up to the establishment. You had Donald Trump who ran anti-war. He wasn't able to stand up to the establishment. He got talked into going and bombing Iran.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much for taking time today.
Appreciate it, David. Thank you.